Welcome to Bridget's podcast, where her guest is a retired educator, Charles Otterman. Today, they will discuss the type of instruction that makes for great learning in the classroom.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Instead of discussing a political topic, we're going to pivot to a topic that's fundamentally critical to the future of our society, yet one that often gets overlooked in the daily news cycle: the philosophy of education in America. Specifically, how the underlying goals behind teaching profoundly shape how our young minds are taught and how they ultimately learn. It's about what we're trying to do when we educate, beyond just passing tests. And to help me unravel this incredibly rich and frankly vital subject, I am absolutely thrilled to welcome back a very special guest. He's a man who has dedicated his entire professional life to the classroom, 33 years in public education, which is just incredible. Please join me in welcoming Charles Otterman as my guest. Charles, it's wonderful to have you here.
Bridget, thank you so much for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. And honestly, when you mentioned this topic, I was absolutely thrilled. I've been really looking forward to this discussion, especially given my background. It's an area I'm incredibly passionate about and one that I think needs far more conversation than it currently gets. So thank you again for the invitation.
My pleasure, Charles. It's truly an honor to have your expertise guiding us through this. So let's just jump right in, shall we? When I think about what makes a truly great learning experience, what really stands out to me and what I aspire to for any learner, young or old, is a lesson that actually teaches students how to think. Not just what to think, but the process, the mechanism, the critical faculties. That's where the real magic happens, I believe. What are your initial thoughts on that, Charles?
Bridget, I couldn't agree with you more. Teaching students how to think is without a doubt one of the most important, if not the most important, goals of education. But here's where it gets a bit tricky, and I'll be frank, it's a very lofty goal. And honestly, I'd argue that most teachers, despite their best intentions and their dedication, are actually ill-prepared to effectively model and teach their students how to think. Not because they're not smart or committed, but because they often lack a basic philosophical understanding of what it actually means to teach someone how to think. It's deeper than just critical thinking exercises. It's about understanding the foundational elements of thought itself.
That's a powerful statement, Charles, and it immediately makes me want to dig deeper. When you say teachers lack a philosophical understanding of what it means to teach how to think, what exactly do you mean by that? Can you elaborate on the nuances you're seeing that might be missing from our current educational framework?
Absolutely, Bridget. Let's break it down. To truly teach a person how to think in a comprehensive sense means teaching them the essential tools of reasoning. This primarily involves teaching them how to think with deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. It means cultivating an understanding of logical inquiry and, crucially, an awareness of the weaknesses inherent in using logical fallacies in one's thinking. Now, here's where the gap often lies. Most teachers understand, at least on a foundational level, how to teach deductive reasoning. We see this in the scientific methods taught in science classes or in descriptive analysis and social studies. We teach the what is of thinking, the facts, the observable phenomena, the cause and effect that can be directly observed and tested. That's the core of our scientific curriculum, and it's vital, don't get me wrong. Where we fall short, where our philosophical grounding evaporates, is in teaching inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning shapes how we think about the normative world, how we assign value, weigh perspectives, judge possibilities, and consider what ought to be. Deductive reasoning, by contrast, trains us to analyze the objective what is of existence. Yet American public education often treats scientific thinking as the whole of thinking itself. Without teaching students to assess values, infer probabilities, and make judgments about what should be done, we're not teaching them to think, we're teaching them to recite facts and follow prescribed paths. True thinking requires the ability to form informed values, not just process information, and the difference shapes everything.
Wow, Charles, that's just incredibly insightful. I'm sitting here picturing this, and honestly, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in your classroom, seeing you work this kind of magic in person. That distinction between what is and what ought to be, it's so fundamental yet so rarely articulated within the standard curriculum. It makes me wonder, how many students go through their entire K-12, even college education, without ever truly grappling with that second part? It's sobering to consider. But I know you, Charles, I know you didn't stop there. Teaching a student how to master deductive and inductive reasoning, how to think critically and philosophically, that's a monumental achievement in itself. But I have a feeling you pushed beyond even that. You were always about cultivating a truly well-rounded, lifelong learner. So what else was integral to your approach beyond how to think?
You're absolutely right, Bridget. While teaching a student how to think, giving them those invaluable tools of reasoning is paramount, it's still not enough, not by itself. To truly foster a well-rounded individual, someone who can navigate the complexities of life, What's also profoundly needed is to teach them the importance of what to think. Now, that might sound counterintuitive to some, especially after just advocating for independent thought. But bear with me. This notion of what to think isn't about rote memorization of opinions or doctrines. It's about developing a crucial mental health component. It's about helping a student understand the importance of disciplining the mind. And I have to give credit where it's due. This idea, the core of it, I actually stole or rather drew immense inspiration from the commencement speech given by the brilliant American author David Foster Wallace titled, "This is Water." It's a speech every student, every adult really, should hear and internalize. It fundamentally shifts your perspective on conscious living and the importance of choosing where and how you direct your mental energy.
Ah, This is Water. What a fantastic reference. For those of our listeners who might not be familiar with that speech, which I highly recommend everyone seek out, Charles, could you give us a brief summary? What are the key takeaways and how does it connect to this idea of disciplining the mind, of what to think?
Certainly, Bridget. For those who haven't encountered it, This is Water is essentially a profound meditation on the unconscious, default settings of our minds, and the constant, often tedious choices we face every day about what to pay attention to, what to value, and how to interpret our experiences. Wallace uses the famous opening anecdote of two young fish swimming along who encounter an older fish. The older fish greets them, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" The two young fish swim on a bit, and then one looks at the other and asks, "What the hell is water?" The most obvious and important realities are often the hardest to see because they're so constant. Wallace argues that real education isn't just learning facts, but learning to be aware enough to choose what to pay attention to, how to make meaning, and how to rise above our default self-centered settings. In the daily grind, traffic, long lines, we instinctively slip into irritation and self-pity. But he urges us to choose a different perspective, to imagine the erratic driver rushing to a sick child or the exhausted cashier doing their best. It's about consciously choosing empathy over annoyance, connection over isolation. You have the freedom to decide what to think about your experience, and that choice shapes your well-being. It's a call to be less certain, less arrogant, and more open to the hidden complexity of others' lives. To bring this back to education, a genuinely well-rounded student, someone able to navigate both the physical and social world, must do two things at once. First, they must discipline their mind as to what to think, the This is Water work of choosing perspective, empathy, and meaning. Second, they must use deductive and inductive reasoning to learn how to think about those choices. Without both, they're incomplete. If they know how to think but never examine what they think, they become overwhelmed, cynical, or easily manipulated. If they know what to think but lack reasoning skills, they become rigid and dogmatic. Teachers are good at facts and even some scientific method, but they often neglect the nuanced how to think of inductive reasoning and, crucially, the discipline of choosing one's perspective rather than defaulting to self-centered settings.
Charles, this has been such a profoundly important discussion. I mean, truly, it gives our listeners such a vital, another way to think about how our young minds should be shaped for future learning growth. It moves beyond just the banking model of education, as Paulo Freire called it, where we just deposit information, and really gets to the core of developing whole, thoughtful, engaged human beings. The integration of how to think with the crucial element of what to think, the mental discipline and conscious choice, is something I think every educator, every parent, every policymaker really needs to internalize. It shifts the entire paradigm. Thank you for articulating it so clearly and passionately.
You are most welcome, Bridget. It's been a real pleasure. And to all the listeners out there, I really want to emphasize this. Critical thinking is just that. It's thinking critically, which means it's always questioning, always challenging preconceived notions of what is a fact and of what is right or wrong. Good education is not judgmental in its pursuit of understanding. It places logical inquiry as the most important function that leads the direction of our thinking. It's about the journey of discovery, not just the destination of a correct answer. Keep asking why and what if and what ought to be.
What a perfect note to end on, Charles. Thank you again for your incredible insights and for sharing your wisdom with us today. And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us once again on this journey of exploration and critical thought. Until next time, keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep